My name is Zach Arnold. I'm a Hollywood film and television editor, a documentary director, father of two, and creator of Optimize Yourself. Since beginning my career, I have battled attention issues, anxiety, and creative burnout more times than I can keep track of. Back in 2005, after almost losing the battle with suicidal depression, I decided that I no longer wanted to sacrifice myself for the sake of my career. I was done barely surviving. I wanted to thrive. Since then, I have obsessively searched for every possible way to optimize my own creative performance. My journey is far from complete, but I have now made it my mission to shorten your learning curve so you can forge your own path to greatness without having to sacrifice balance in the process. Now it's time to start designing the optimized version of you. Hello and welcome to episode number 8 of the Optimize Yourself podcast. If you're a first-time listener, I'm grateful to have you with me, and I appreciate you taking the time to focus on finding just a little work-life balance and sanity in this crazy world that we live in. And hey, if you're a long-time listener from my previous podcast, welcome to my brand new show. Either way, if you enjoyed this podcast and you're inspired to learn more and listen more, I invite you to subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or whatever app you prefer, because I have tons of great guests, giveaways, and free training coming your way on a weekly basis. Just visit optimizeyourself.me/subscribe for more info, or you can subscribe directly in your app of choice. If you're a regular listener, you probably already know this, but prioritizing sleep is absolutely essential if you want to consistently generate creative thoughts and stay focused. And no, caffeine and Red Bull are not adequate replacements. If you're new to the science of sleep, then you're in the right place, because this week is a 2-for-1 special. If you missed episode number 7 with Sean Stevenson, I highly recommend giving that a listen first, because it contains loads of information about why sleep is so important to your mental and physical health. And it's also great for beginners who don't know much about the basic science of sleep. It also has a lot of great suggestions to start improving your sleep quality and quantity without a ton of effort or investment. Now, in this episode, I have an in-depth conversation with one of my favorite health resources on the planet, biohacker and fitness expert Ben Greenfield, and we dive way deeper into the sleep rabbit hole and discuss advanced sleep hacks, wearables, and other crazy tech to take your sleep and your cognitive abilities to the next level. Some of the stuff that he talks about in this episode blew my mind. So if you feel like you already have basic sleep hygiene under control, give some of these next level options a try. Seriously, the show notes for this episode are like a Wikipedia page for biohacking your sleep. If this interview inspires you to take action, I invite you to download my brand new Ultimate Guide to Optimizing Your Creativity, which contains plenty of concrete action steps and recommendations for awesome new technology that can help you sleep better, sleep longer, and start waking up refreshed and ready to take on the day with boundless creativity rather than fueling your work with caffeine and Red Bull. Because you can't be creative if you are constantly exhausted and burned out. To download my Ultimate Guide 100% free, simply visit optimizeyourself.me/ultimate guide, and I will send it to your inbox immediately. Okay, I know that you're probably anxious to jump into the interview, but I do have one last quick favor to ask of you. And taking just 2 minutes would mean the world to me, and it would help expose this program to more people that it can inspire. As my longtime listeners know, my previous podcast, Fitness and Post, had over 100 5-star reviews in iTunes, but now that I've renamed the show, I am back to 0. Thank you very much, Apple. It took me 3 years to earn those 100 5-star reviews, but now my goal is to get this show up to 100 5-star reviews in the next 3 months by the end of November. And with your help, I know that we can do it together. So if you leave an honest review of the show on iTunes, and I'm heavily stressing the word honest, you are going to be eligible to win either a TopoMat, a Topo Mini, a human charger device, or a private 1-hour coaching session via Skype with yours truly. I'm going to be giving away these prizes for the months of September, October, and November. So your one review gives you 3 chances to win, and if you don't win, your entries carry over to the next month until the giveaways are complete. And on top of this, I also have several ways that you can earn even more bonus entries. To leave your honest review and register for this contest, just visit optimizeyourself.me/win. And thank you so much in advance for your support. And now, without further ado, after a brief break to recognize our sponsors, my interview with fitness expert and biohacker Ben Greenfield. To access the show notes for this episode, please visit optimizeyourself.me/episode08. That's the word episode and the numbers 08. This episode is made possible by ErgoDriven, the makers of the Topo Mat and Topo Mini, my number one recommendations for anybody interested in moving more at their height adjustable workstation. Listen, standing desks are only great if you're standing well. Otherwise, you're constantly fighting fatigue and chronic pain. Not like any other anti-fatigue mat, the Topo is scientifically proven to help you move more throughout the day, which helps reduce discomfort and also increase your focus and productivity. And they're really fun and a great conversation starter too. To learn more, visit optimizeyourself.me/topo. That's TOPO. This episode is made possible by the Human Charger, a revolutionary new light therapy device made specifically for people who spend long days in the dark and don't get enough sunlight, i.e. you and me. Simply put in the earbuds for 12 minutes a day to receive your daily recommended dosage of UV-free white light. Doing so can drastically increase your energy, improve your mood, and increase mental alertness and focus. This device has literally changed my life, and I use it every morning without fail. To learn more, visit optimizeyourself.me/humancharger, and you can use the code OPTIMIZE to get 20% off your order. So I'm here today with Ben Greenfield. He is the New York Times best-selling author of Beyond Training. He's an all-around badass, human encyclopedia of better health, and most importantly, this is the guy that got me hooked on kombucha. So, Ben, it is a pleasure to have you back here for the third time.
Are you really hooked on kombucha? Like, is it an actual addiction?
I don't know if it's an actual addiction. I can certainly go without it and not get like jitters or, want to pull my hair out. But dude, I love the stuff.
Well,
it's amazing.
It has some alcohol in it, so you might need to start going to AA. I mean, this could be like an actual addiction, dude.
Yes, I might need kombucha detox.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be KA, Kombucha Anonymous.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, as a total aside, we're not going to go into kombucha today. But what I really want to talk about in this episode is I want to dig deep into the science of sleep. Now, recently, my audience knows that I had an in-depth conversation with Sean Stevenson, who has a best-selling book that's been going around for a while in the health community, all about better
he's
sleep.
An idiot. He doesn't know anything about sleep.
I could not agree more. It's one of the worst.
Stupid little flat-billed hat. Yeah.
Yes, agreed. Like one of the worst episodes I've done. No useful information whatsoever. I almost didn't publish it, to be honest, but I did just because I had it. So I'm going to put a link to the show notes to that because that is a treasure trove of information about sleep. But he and I both universally agree that when it comes to getting deeper into really biohacking sleep, talking about technology, talking about the science of it, it's like you're the guy to talk to. So that's why I wanted to have you on specifically today, is to really dig into sleep.
Cool. Thanks. I'm honored. Now the pressure's on.
Absolutely. Well, you're good under pressure. I've seen you run Spartan races, so I know you're good under pressure.
That's right. That involves rope climbing, not biochemistry, though.
There is true, but you're equally as good with the biochemistry as you are with the rope climbing. So don't sell yourself too short. So for anybody that hasn't listened to that episode yet, I do want to give them just a super brief primer on some of the basics of sleep, because in my industry specifically, in a lot of creative industries, and frankly, in American work culture nowadays, sleep deprivation is kind of a badge of honor. It's kind of like a sign of toughness. Like, well, I do 20-hour days and I do 18-hour days, and it's kind of ridiculous. So can we first just talk a little bit about why you shouldn't be wearing your sleep deprivation badge of honor and why lack of sleep is really, really bad for you?
Yeah, well, it does kind of depend. I mean, there is a portion of the population that actually has a genetic mutation that allows them to function with less sleep. These would be the people that are probably hardwired to be, from an ancestral standpoint, the watchman at night or whatever you want to call it. But basically, there's a genetic mutation. There's a gene called DEC2. And what that gene allows some folks to do is to, during a period of time when most people would go from their sleep cycles, right, from light stage 1 sleep down into their deeper stage 4 sleep and then back up out of stage 4 sleep, most people, that takes about 75 to 90 minutes to do that. And most people need to do that about 4 to 5 times during a 24-hour cycle. Or you could also look at it as you needing to go through that about 30 to 35 times during any given week for you to get full sleep during the week, right? So we're talking about sleep cycles, a number of sleep cycles. And these people with this gene, this mutation, these freaks of nature, they're able to actually get by on going through those full sleep cycles in closer to 20 to 40 minutes. And what that means is that they can actually get some decent repair, memory consolidation, re-regulation of hormones, release of growth hormones, some of those things that take the rest of us unlucky people, a longer period of time to do. These folks can actually do it, with 4 to 5 hours of sleep. Now, granted, I think there are some other issues. Most of the folks who I've talked to who do pretty well in 4 to 5 hours of sleep, they have things like night terrors and these weird lucid dreams. I think there are some things that happen that could even limit memory consolidation and some of the other things that are supposed to happen during longer sleep cycles in people who have that gene mutation. But regardless, they are actually those people that you'd probably want with you if the zombie apocalypse happens and somebody needs to stay up during the night while everybody else is sleeping, right?
Nice.
But for the rest of us, we do need to go through anywhere from 30 to 35 of these, 75 to 90 minute-ish sleep cycles each week in order for memories to consolidate, in order for neural repair and recovery to occur, in order for central nervous system repair and recovery to occur, in order for growth hormone to be released to allow for us to have an anabolic response that allows for things like soft tissue repair or nerve repair. And so that's kind of what you're looking at when it comes to sleep cycles and how much you want to get and the importance of sleep. But yeah, there are some people who can get by on less sleep.
Now let's talk about that some people, because I know that there are, I'm sure, a lot of people listening right now thinking, oh, see, I told you I don't need a lot of sleep. Let's talk about the percentage of people that actually have that genetic mutation, because I know that it can't be 75% of the population. And that's about the percentage of the population in my industry that's not sleeping enough.
No, it's about 0.5 to 2%.
So basically the odds are extremely slim that if you're listening, you actually have a genetic predisposition to being able to sleep a lot less than everybody else.
Yeah, but when you look at things from a nature versus nurture standpoint, some people, perhaps not by nature, but by nurture, can get by on less sleep. And those would be people with lower levels of physical activity, for example, like the Ironman triathlete or the NBA basketball player often needs, in many cases, some of the better professionals who I've spoken with or who I've seen talk about their sleep in terms of optimum sleep function. In addition to some of the research that's been done on, especially like NBA players and free throw percentage, et cetera, we're talking 9 to 11 hours of sleep for some of these professional athletes who are really working their bodies hard during the day. We're talking like 3 to 5 hours of focused training. And then on the flip side, monks, people who do transcendental meditation, yogis, people who have certain periods of time during the day where they actually are engaged in, for example, high amounts of alpha or theta or delta brainwave production because of specific lifestyle habits that they've worked in during the day. A lot of times these folks do not lose things like executive function, cognitive function. They don't experience the same fluctuation in, say, like satiety or appetite regulating hormones, despite not having that specific gene and sleeping 5 to 6 hours per night. And so it does depend on what it is that you're doing during the day as well when it comes to how much sleep you need.
Sure, and I'm glad that you brought that up because clearly my audience is very different than yours, where you have Ironmen and CrossFitters and obstacle course racers and obstacle dominators. But I have people that are working equally as hard on a cognitive level, where they're probably not moving much during the day, and I'm doing everything I can to get people moving more throughout their workday. But cognitively, they might be doing these crazy sessions of 16 hours straight. So I'm assuming that rather than needing less sleep just because they're not exercising or doing bench presses or running marathons, they still are going to require extra amounts because of the energy expended from those high mental activities, correct?
Yeah, about 20% of the people that I work with are athletes. The rest are professional poker players, CEOs, people who have high cognitive demand, hard charging, high achieving lifestyles, but who aren't professional athletes. And for those people, sleep is just as important. And I use just as many sleep, hacking techniques, so to speak, with those folks as I do with the professional athletes who I work with.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key that I want to hammer home today and give a lot of cool tools and tips to be able to get that better quality sleep, even if you can't get the quantity. But I just don't want people to think, well, I don't really exercise and I'm not a hard charging athlete, so I don't really need that much sleep, because the mental athletics and the stamina and the creative focus, those will burn you out just as quickly, at least in my own experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one area that I want to go to that you touched on very briefly is this idea of appetite suppression hormones. And obesity is clearly an epidemic throughout the country, and it's something I see a lot in my industry as well. So can you talk just a little bit about how sleep is tied to ghrelin, leptin, and just the whether or not you have, like if you have the munchies at night or you don't, and how obesity and weight gain are linked specifically to sleep?
Sure. Well, I mean, you've pretty much said it right there. When you do not have adequate sleep, you tend to be less sensitive to the hormone leptin, which means that, well, there's a couple of things going on. First of all, leptin is a hormone that your body becomes more responsive to and releases in greater quantities when you have produced adequate amounts of melatonin. Okay, so leptin is going to help you to feel more satiety after consuming a meal. It is going to allow for proper partitioning of nutrients into storage tissue after you've eaten, such as fats getting stored away in adipose tissue and sugars getting stored away in liver glycogen and muscle glycogen, et cetera. And when you are responsive to it, you also tend to have a satiety signal sent to your brain when you actually are full, or when you actually have reached a point where the adipose tissue and the sugar levels have been topped off. In the absence of that hormone, your body continues to try to conserve and store calories despite already being full. It's as though when you are filling the gas tank in your car at the gas station and you hear that little click that you would normally hear when the gas tank is full, it's as though when you are leptin insensitive or leptin resistant, that click doesn't occur and the gas just keeps going, spilling out, into the street and in this case, spilling out into your fat cells. And so you simply don't have that normal satiety signal. Now, melatonin is something that would be released in adequate quantities, not only when you are sleeping enough, but also when you are sleeping in a cool environment, right? That's one trigger for a large amount of melatonin to be released, keeping your bed cold, keeping your sleeping environment cold. Another key concept when it comes to staying cold would be what research has shown is that finishing any hard workouts within about 3 hours of bedtime is also pretty crucial for keeping the core temperature down. And then the other thing that seems to be most crucial for melatonin release is the absence of blue light and artificial light, both leading up to the time that you are going to bed, but then also when you are in bed, in your room, meaning that, everything from the little blue light that the power button on the TV produces to your iPad plugged in to anything else that might be on in the room, any of that can interfere with melatonin production. So what you'd want to do is pay attention to temperature and pay attention to light in order to maximize melatonin production. Then as a consequence of that downstream, maximize leptin sensitivity and leptin production. And the flip side could be said for the hormone ghrelin, which is a little bit synergistic to leptin in that it is going to cause increases in appetite. It's going to cause increases in your drive to eat. And that's great from a survival standpoint when it comes to your body releasing adequate amounts of ghrelin. So you actually go out and you eat and you satisfy everything you need for neurotransmitters and muscle repair and recovery, et cetera. But once again, raging levels of ghrelin, especially in the absence of leptin, just make you hungry, and especially hungry for many calorie-dense, fat-rich, sugar-rich foods during the day, because those are the most calorie-dense, those are the most satiating. In many cases, those are the ones that are going to dump the most energy into your body. So you really really tend to crave, the Snickers bars and the ice cream more than you do the kale salad when you're low on sleep. And a big part of that is the large amount of ghrelin, in addition to the lower amounts of leptin or the lower amount of leptin sensitivity. So that's the basics when it comes to hormone. There are other hormones we could talk about. For example, growth hormone pulses and surges as you are asleep, and that's important for recovery. That's important for fat burning and immobilization of fatty acids from adipose tissue. And that's another one that tends to get downregulated when you're low on sleep or when you're low on melatonin. So that's one. Testosterone tends to drop when you're low on sleep. Cortisol tends to rise when you're low on sleep. So there are other hormones, but that's kind of the deal with leptin and ghrelin. And then the only other thing I should mention is that it appears that with melatonin release and core body temperature, you actually should be asleep. And this is going to be a little bit variable from person to person, depending on your unique chronobiology. Some people are morning people, some people are night people, and there is some science behind that. There's a really good book called The Power of When by Dr. Michael Bruce about this. But the idea here is that if you are not asleep for approximately 4 hours, by the time 2 to 3 a.m. rolls around, you're usually limiting the amount of melatonin that you're able to produce and also your leptin sensitivity. And this means that for the majority of people, a bedtime much later than about 11 p.m. is not going to do you any favors from a hormonal standpoint. Now, granted, like I mentioned, this is based off of people's unique chronobiology, and there are some people that from a biomechanical or a biochemical rather standpoint, they really are night people. They really do operate a little bit better at night. And those people are able to have, like, say, a midnight to 8 a.m. sleep cycle and just stay perfectly normalized when it comes to hormones. But for most people, when it comes to, and this is all based off the interaction of light and circadian rhythm, right? So let's say the sun sets at 7, it's dark by 7:30. You need to be in bed by 10 in order to get optimum leptin and melatonin production between about 2 and 3 a.m. And so the actual time of bed is going to influence this just as much as the amount of sleep in many cases.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought that up because everybody's always looking for the magic number. I'm sure you're asked that all the time. Well, how many hours do I need? Just tell me how many hours. And it just seems to me there's so many other components that go into it other than just the amount of time that your body is laying in your bed continuously.
Right.
So that having been said, where I want to go next is the idea of light and go a little bit deeper into this, because one of the huge revelations that I've had in my study of sleep, and I certainly haven't gone even a tenth as deep as you have, but it's understanding how much light actually affects my circadian rhythms and my hormonal production and the quality of my sleep. So we talked about it a little bit with Sean, where, he has a saying where a good night's sleep starts as soon as you wake up in the morning. And we talked about sunlight exposure. But now I want to go deeper into the biohacking world, because I know you've discovered some amazing ways to get artificial light exposure if you're either in a climate where you can't be exposed to light early in the morning or where your schedule doesn't allow it. So let's go a little bit deeper into how to use light to improve the quality of your sleep.
Yeah, light is a Zeitgeber, which means that there are certain elements of life that can move your circadian rhythm forward or move your circadian rhythm backwards. What I mean by that is that, let's say you've been traveling from the Eastern time zone to the Pacific time zone. This means that at 7 a.m. in the morning, Pacific time zone, your body thinks that it is 10 a.m. in Eastern time zone, and vice versa, right? Let's say you're in an Eastern time zone and it's 7 a.m., your body thinks that it is 4 a.m. Well, in a situation like that, it would behoove you to figure out a way to send your body a signal that it actually is not, let's say, 10 a.m. or 4 a.m., and it is, in fact, time for you to get up and do what it is that you want to do. Well, the 3 cues that appear to be the most effective as Zeitgebers to send this message to your body that it is actually morning, or in some cases is evening, it's light, movement, and food. And so what this means is that one of the best things to do if you're out of your time zone, you've traveled across the world, it's morning, you're groggy because it's not morning wherever you came from, the best things you could do would be to present your body with adequate amounts of sunlight or something that really simulates all the different rays of light that come from sunlight to get some food into your system. And by the way, protein, about 20 to 30 grams of protein appear to be something that is somewhat crucial to include with that food, with that meal. And then finally, movement, whether it's a swim or hitting the weight room or yoga or whatever else. So the idea here when it comes to light is, let's face it, in some cases, light is not readily available. In some cases, you cannot get out into the sunlight to send your body that cue, that signal that it is morning. Right. So let's say I am back east. It is 7 a.m. I'm groggy because I'm used to living in Washington State, but I'm in New York City where 7 a.m. and back in Washington State, it is 4 a.m. Let's say it's dark and gray and rainy in New York. Well, how the hell am I going to send my body that light-based signal? Sure, I could go eat breakfast and I could include some eggs with breakfast to get the protein feeding and nail that component. And I could hit the gym perhaps a little bit before breakfast to get the movement-based component. But when it comes to light, what I've found is that, as you've alluded to, Zach, there are certain biohacks that can assist with this. So one idea is that you have photoreceptors on the surface of your brain that are very similar to the photoreceptors that are found in the back of your eyes. And by targeting light, specifically through the ear canals, you can send that message of light to your brain. And so, for example, there is an LED headset called the Human Charger that is basically a lighting device. You put like earbuds that would play audio, except it's producing light instead of playing audio. You put those into your ears, and for 12 minutes, it shines bright light into your ears to send your body a message that it is daytime, it is light time. There's a set of glasses, and I use both of these quite frequently. They work for things like seasonal affective disorder, jet lag, kind of a pick-me-up in the morning, and also for retiming of the circadian rhythm. These glasses, appropriately enough, called the retimers, and these are glasses that produce a greenish-blue wavelength of light, very similar to the greenish-blue wavelengths of light we would get from the sun in the morning, except you put them on your face. You wear them like glasses while you're working on your computer or making coffee or making breakfast or working out or whatever it is that you're doing, and you wear these from 20 to 30 minutes or so. And frankly, they're far more portable than these big, like, blue light boxes that you often see indicated for seasonal affective disorder or for circadian rhythm. They also produce a more natural wavelength of light closer to that of the sun. So those are just a couple examples, if you aren't able to get out into the sunshine, of ways to kind of jumpstart the circadian rhythm, to set it forwards or set it backwards, depending on what part of the world that you're in. And that's why you would use something like light. And of course, the key part of this is that not only is that going to jumpstart your circadian rhythm and help you to sleep better when night arrives, 8 or 10 or 12 hours later, but the other thing you'd, of course, want to do is the complete opposite at night. You wouldn't want these big blue light sources. You wouldn't want to wear suppose if you're going to go out and go to a rave and party in Vegas for a few hours and stay out till 2 a.m., you could actually do this at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. for a big surge in wakefulness, even if you didn't want to drink a cup of coffee. But ideally, if you're trying to sleep, which is what we're talking about, you would limit blue light exposure, right? So, for example, I didn't just talk about these, but in my office right now, while I'm talking to you, I have installed in my office a special kind of light bulb made by a company called Lighting Science, and they are called Awake and Alert bulbs. These bulbs up on the ceiling of my office produce an intense amount of blue light, more blue light than the average bulb would produce. So they're great when I'm working in the morning, especially when I'm not out in the sunshine. If I were to walk into my office in the evening, however, these would really F up my ability to sleep later on at night. So what I do in the evenings is not only do I wear, the blue light blocking glasses that you see a lot of folks wearing these days to limit the amount of blue light that I'm getting from screens and iPhones and artificial lighting, and especially like brake lights of cars and street lights are notorious for this. But then I also have red light in my office. So I have a desk lamp with I use a light bulb called a Ruby Lux, RUBYLUX, and it's just a kind of like a near infrared form of light with a little bit of red light mixed in. And that's how my office is lit at night. It's almost very similar to if I'd lit a candle at night without the mess of the wax, et cetera. I just kind of flip the light on. I've got this Ruby Lux lamp in my office for night work. Similarly, in my bedroom, my children's bedroom, I don't have any light bulbs that produce light from the blue light wave spectrum. In this case, I also use bulbs from a company called Lighting Science, and these are called nighttime bulbs, or they make one called a sleepy baby bulb as well for like a baby's bedroom, but these have the absence of blue light. So essentially, long answer to your question, it comes down to intense amounts of blue light in the morning, whether that be from sunshine or any of these biohacks that I just talked about, like light bulbs or glasses or in-ear therapy type of devices. And then in the evening, the absence of blue light and the presence of things like red light, whether that's candles or whether that's red light producing lamps or bulbs or infrared or anything along those lines. And so it's kind of that 1-2 combo that allows you to use light to maintain your circadian rhythms adequately.
Right. And one thing that I talk about on the show in the past as well, I tell people that after about 6 or 7 o'clock at night when my kids go to bed, it basically looks like a dark room in my office where it's only red lights. I use flux on my computer, so it's a really deep red color on my computer monitors. So it either looks like I'm in, a photo processing lab or I'm shooting porn. It's one or the other. It just depends.
And by the way, there's a better piece of software than Flux now.
Ooh.
That
now I'm listening.
Not only kind of decreases some of the brightness of the screen, reduces the blue light, but it reduces what is called the temperature, which is also important, and also reduces the flicker, which is also important. And that piece of software is called Iris. I interviewed this pretty brilliant European fellow who created it, and there's a podcast I've done somewhere. It's called like, Is Your Computer Monitor Slowly Destroying Your Eyes? It's somewhere at bengreenfieldfitness.com if you wanted to listen in. And I think he even has a discount code for the software on there. But that one's called Iris, or Iris Tech, it's also known as, and it works even better than Flux.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a new one for me. And this is just a testament to anybody listening that just by default, if you have Ben Greenfield in your earbuds once a day, you're just by default going to be healthier. It's just the way that it works because you learn all this cool stuff.
I would imagine that someone could prove you wrong with a Snickers and a bowl of popcorn and a few good movies and my podcast in their ears.
But I think that if you watched Netflix for 4 hours and ate nothing but ice cream, but you also were listening to the Ben Greenfield podcast, it probably cancel itself out. It really would. But anyway, one other area that I want to go with light really, really quickly. I very much understand now the idea of getting light exposure in the morning. But to go one layer deeper, let's say that somebody is doing that light exposure in the morning, whether it's natural sunlight and taking a walk, or if let's say they're in Alaska, let's go really extreme. They do the human charger or another one of these light panels, but then they're still going to be in a dark room for 12 to 14 hours straight, which is pretty much anybody listening to this show. Do you still need to be conscious of getting light exposure throughout your day if we're talking about sleep?
Yes, especially between the hours of about 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. when the sunlight would normally be brightest and when our hunter-gatherer, gardener, forager ancestors would have experienced a large amount of light out in the sun. That's also a time of day when light exposure is still pretty important. Whether, you could be in the dark room and still be doing something like, every hour wearing like that human charger and flipping on those earbuds for about 12 minutes, or throwing on those glasses for 20 minutes or so. So yeah, it is important during the day and especially between about 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. in the afternoon as well. And by the way, that's when the sun is producing its largest amounts of UVA and UVB rays and tends to be at its brightest in terms of, well, it's measured, I believe it's measured in kelvins, the actual temperature. So the temperature of the sun, is well above, I think, what would be about 3,000 K in a situation like that. And so that would be a time from an ancestral standpoint to also prioritize light.
Got it. I just wanted to make sure people didn't think that, oh, if I get the human charger and I do 15 minutes in the morning, I'm good until nighttime, because I know that you need to be exposed throughout the day. But most people that I know in my industry and other creative industries, they do spend 14 hours a day and they never see the sunlight because they work in basements. So it's a
Right.
very real reality.
Right.
The next area that I want to go to is supplementation, because this is certainly one of your fortes, is understanding the deep science of supplements. And I don't want people to think they need supplementation to sleep and they need drugs to sleep. But I do want to talk about some of the really cool hacks that you have found in the world of supplementation. And we're not talking about Tylenol PM. We're talking about much cooler stuff.
Yeah, you mean supplements for sleep?
Yeah, supplements that can specifically help you get better sleep, get you deeper, high quality sleep.
Sure. There are several, but a few that I would consider to be higher up on the priority list. Of course, we already discussed melatonin. Now, large amounts of melatonin when you are jet lagged can be very good for pushing the reboot button on your circadian rhythm. To put that into context for you, my naturopathic medical physician once informed me that he would give about 50 to 70 milligrams of melatonin to cancer patients, and that would allow them to sleep at night and eliminate pain. It essentially, kind of similar to Valium or Ambien, takes a sledgehammer to your head in terms of shoving you into deep sleep, but unlike those drugs, does not inhibit your ability to achieve deep sleep, which is incredibly important for some of those things like memory consolidation and dreaming and cognitive repair and recovery. Valium and Ambien don't allow you to do that, which is why a lot of people who take that and sleep 8 hours a night still have brain fog and still have cognitive issues because their nervous system is not repairing. Well, one of the things that I'll do, assuming that I don't need to be on hyper alert mode that night when I'm far out of my time zone and I've traveled to Asia or something, is I'll take a pretty hefty dose, 40 to 60 milligrams of melatonin, just for the first couple of days that I'm there. And again, that's a lot of melatonin. Most melatonin supplements, to put this into context, are 3 to 5 milligrams. But then, in addition to using hefty doses of melatonin, when I'm in a situation where I've traveled a lot, I just about every night use microdoses, closer to about 0.3 milligrams, which is not enough to really shut down your own endogenous production, but is enough to give your body just a little bit of a cue. Because let's face it, despite using blue light blockers and despite using the red light producing bulbs in my bedroom, etc., I'm still getting exposed to more artificial light than my ancestors would have, just because I'm still driving in my car back from tennis practice or picking up my kids from somewhere, or I'm still talking on my phone and looking at my phone. And frankly, there's some nights where we have, like, when Master Chef is on, like the kids and I make some cool meal and gather around and watch Master Chef while we eat. Well, that's blue light. And so those microdoses of melatonin can help to mitigate just this fact that we do live in a modern society, and we can't deny that. Unless we're complete social outcasts, I suppose, living in some pristine Himalayan mountaintop or simulating a Unabomber-esque existence in a forest somewhere. But ultimately, microdoses of melatonin, then megadoses of it when you're really out of your time zone, can be helpful. Another one that I like, that I've played around with a little bit, is pH GABA. GABA is gamma-aminobutyric acid. It is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that normally would only interact with receptors in tissues of your body aside from your brain, because it's too large of a molecule to really cross the blood-brain barrier to much extent. But pH GABA is a smaller version of it that can cross the blood-brain barrier. I interviewed a guy who developed a supplement called Sleep Remedy that has not only microdoses of melatonin and some of this pH GABA in it, but that also has a little bit of omega-3 fatty acid, a little bit of vitamin D, a little bit of magnesium, and some of these can also assist with sleep, especially if you're deficient in those specific compounds. So pH GABA and microdosing with melatonin, I'm a big fan of those. I also really like one of the most studied effects of cannabidiol, or CBD, the non-psychoactive extract from the hemp plant, which is still legal in most countries and in all states to purchase and to ship to. This is something that most of the studies on it have been done on depression, on anxiety, on stress, and on sleep. And in a range of about 10 to 60 milligrams, it's extremely efficacious especially for hard charging busy people to shut down their brains at night and assist with sleep without getting any of the psychoactivity or the paranoia from something like, say, THC or marijuana. So you'd want to look for CBD from hemp, for example, so it's not laced with THC, so you're not having to like fail a urine test or something like that. That's another one that I'm a big fan of, would be CBD. Dosages vary based on delivery mechanism. There are some mechanisms that are what would be called lipophilic or water soluble. Typically, all you would need is about anywhere from 10 to 30 milligrams of that to fall asleep. For other delivery mechanisms, sometimes 50 to 100 milligrams are necessary, but CBD would be another that I'll use quite often at night to assist with sleep. And it also helps with inflammation and repair and recovery, so it has some additional benefits. In the world of herbs, there are some herbs that help out quite a bit. Some of the bigger ones that specifically work by helping to decrease salivary cortisol and stress levels would be holy basil, lemon balm. It's not really an herb as much as it is a molecule, but phosphatidylserine. The company Thorne makes a pretty good phosphatidylserine that you could take, that especially if your lack of sleep is due to stress levels, can be pretty helpful. Now, there are, of course, we could go on and on. There are all sorts of things that can assist with sleep, but I would say if you wanted to get the 80-20, 80% of the results from 20% of what is out there, if I could recommend anything, it would be to do as I do. And what I do is I use CBD. Admittedly, my company produces a CBD called Nature CBD that is blended with lemon balm, with ashwagandha, another thing that can help to decrease cortisol, and with magnesium. Right. So I'll take typically about 3 to 4 capsules of that before bed and combine it with 1 packet of Sleep Remedy, which is that other supplement I mentioned that is a combination of pH GABA and microdoses of melatonin. I've found that 1-2 combo to work really well for me in just about any situation without producing excessive grogginess the next morning or anything along those lines. Now, there are other situations where you might want to completely knock yourself out, or you're completely stressed, or your lack of sleep is due to pain or relationship issues or things like that. And the last one I would mention to you would be Kratom, Kratom. Some varieties are more energetic and uplifting and mood enhancing. Some are a little bit more euphoric and can really shove you into a very relaxed state. And Kratom, you can still purchase it online. The federal government in the United States tried to classify it as a Schedule I controlled substance, but at this time it's still not. And there are certain strains of Kratom that, when mixed in a tea and taken about 40 to 60 minutes prior to bed or in the evening at some point, even before dinner, tend to really, really help with relaxation. And the strain that I've found to be most efficacious when it comes to Kratom, especially in people who are like really beat up, they've had a hard workout, low back pain, knee injuries, things like that, would be a red variety. There's one called Red Vein. It's kind of like marijuana, where different strains do different things, but red Kratom appears to be and has, at least for me, been very, very good for those situations where lack of sleep might be due to some type of physical issue, such as having strained or sprained something. The reason for that is because it acts very, very similarly in the same ways like an opioid-based painkiller works, without the actual addictive properties. So Kratom would be another one to kind of like potentially have in your medicine cabinet as something you could turn to in a situation like that.
Well, this is definitely some pretty awesome next level stuff. I'm still pretty much on the beginner level with my evening supplementation. But for me, the staples are magnesium glycinate every evening, as well as EPA, DHA, and then I'll also throw in some probiotics if I want to do the, just kind of clean up the gut flora during the evening.
Sure.
But I definitely think I want to test out the CBD, because that sounds interesting. It doesn't sound nearly as fun without the THC, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, some people actually do get high off CBD. You have to take a lot of it, though. Usually you have to take about 100 milligrams or so to get high. So about double the dose of what I would usually use prior to bed.
All right. Well, now that I want to go real quickly to the last thing, because I want to be very respectful of your time. And this is going to be the antithesis of crazy biohacks and technology. In my opinion, one of the most important parts of getting good, high quality sleep is routines. And I know that you're big on an evening routine. So can you very briefly walk me through what are some of the key components that anybody should have as part of an evening routine if they want to sleep better?
Sure. In brief, it would be number one, as you've just learned, to get your body cold, decrease the core temperature. Hot, cold contrast shower can be very effective, especially if you have an evening workout. This would mean that you put the water in the shower on cold for 20 seconds and then hot for 10 seconds. And you go through several cycles of that, right? So you take like a 5-minute hot, cold contrast shower of 20 seconds cold to 10 seconds hot. You can also decrease the temperature in your home to about 60 to 65 degrees at night, which might be a little cool for you for during the day, but that can really help with sleep at night. And then the last thing you could experiment with would be something like a chili pad, which is a special cooling mattress you can get off of, for example, Amazon, that will circulate cold water underneath your mattress while you are asleep. So that would be one evening routine, and I frankly do all three of those myself. Another one, we kind of exhausted the light dark part of things quite a bit, so that's another one that's important. Finishing up your workout about 3 hours before bedtime is important. More important actually than working out in the morning. Working out in the morning hard can actually inhibit sleep later on in the day. Working out hard in the afternoon or early evening and finishing up within 3 hours prior to bedtime actually enhances sleep. So it's kind of interesting. Lots of interesting research out there on exercise and sleep. Of course, shut off work and everything, close to about 9 p.m. for a 10 p.m. bedtime. But I also keep paper books, like fiction books or history books or books that aren't anything to do with business or wouldn't get my mind humming about business. I keep those in the bedroom rather than a Kindle or a computer or a phone, for example. Those would be the biggies. The last thing I would throw in there is I do track all of this. I do like sleep tracking, and a lot of these devices like the Fitbit or the Jawbone, they constantly bombard your body with radiation, specifically a class 1 Bluetooth signal while you're asleep. And this has been shown to do things like affect blood-brain barrier leakage in rodent models and to affect things like the what would be called the microDNA circulating in your blood. And I'm reticent to use many of these devices. I use a ring. It's called an Aura, OURA, and I can place it in airplane mode, but it has a built-in internal computer that will allow me to collect things like, how much time I spent in rapid eye movement sleep, how long it took to fall asleep, how my heart rate fluctuated while I was asleep, which is indicative of my core temperature while I sleep, et cetera. And, that's kind of cool where you could see like, okay, well, I started taking, let's say, CBD, but for some reason for me, like it shoved my REM cycles down from being at like 15% down to 2%. So maybe that's not like the supplement for me. Or, maybe I found that it actually increased those sleep cycles and decrease my sleep latency or how long it took me to fall asleep. So that's a keeper. But I'm a fan of quantifying a lot of this stuff too. Those are just a few of the little sleep habits that I'd recommend.
Yeah, that was going to be the last quick question, was actually going to be about sleep tracking. And it's interesting you mentioned the Fitbit and the Bluetooth, because I have my phone in airplane mode, but I've used the Sleep Cycle alarm clock app for, almost 2 years now. But I didn't realize that I needed to go even further, and just being in airplane mode wasn't enough. So that's a new one for me. So you're saying
you want to make sure Bluetooth is off in addition to airplane mode.
Got it. But it's okay if I wanted to have the Fitbit, like I have the Fitbit Blaze, so it has the heart rate monitor on it. But if it's not transmitting Bluetooth, I'm okay to keep the device on as long as Bluetooth is off and I'm in airplane mode. That's okay.
Right.
Okay, got it. All right. Well, that being the case, I'm going to be looking into the Aura tracker because I want to go to the next level of sleep tracking, and I'm glad that you answered that one for me already. So I want to be respectful of your time. I myself have learned so much just in the last 45 minutes, and I'm sure that my audience has as well. So I want to thank you once again for being a 3-time guest on the podcast, and I guarantee I'm going to keep bothering you to come back for more because everybody loves these episodes. So thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks for having me on, Zach. I'm honored.
Thank you for listening to episode 8 of the Optimize Yourself podcast. To access the various links and resources mentioned in this episode, and let's be honest, there were a ton of resources and links in this episode, please visit optimizeyourself.me/episode 08. If this interview inspires you to take action, I invite you to download my brand new Ultimate Guide to Optimizing Your Creativity, which contains plenty of concrete action steps and recommendations for awesome new technology that can help you sleep better, sleep longer, and start waking up refreshed and ready to take on the day with boundless creativity rather than fueling your work with caffeine and Red Bull. Because you can't be creative if you are constantly exhausted and burned out. To download my Ultimate Guide 100% free, simply visit optimizeyourself.me/ultimate guide and I will send it to your inbox immediately. Also, as a final quick reminder, you can win a Topo Mat, Topo Mini, human charger device, or even a 1-hour coaching session via Skype with yours truly. All it takes to win is 2 minutes to leave an honest review of the show on iTunes to be eligible for prizes throughout the months of September, October, and November. Visit optimizeyourself.me/win for more instructions and to register your review. Thank you for listening. Be well. This episode of the Optimize Yourself podcast was made possible by Ergo-Driven, the makers of the Topo Mat and Topo Mini, my #1 recommendations for anyone interested in moving more at their height-adjustable workstation. Listen, standing desks are only great if you're standing well. Otherwise, you're constantly fighting fatigue and chronic pain. Not like any other anti-fatigue mat, the Topo is scientifically proven to help you move more throughout the day, which helps reduce discomfort and also increase your focus and productivity. My friends at Ergo-Driven did extensive testing and compared their product to the top-of-the-line floor mats, and they found the Topo drove almost 2.5 more moves per minute with 270% more foot motion. Now, what this simply means is that the Topo users move more. I'm standing on one as I read this, and I don't go to a single job without it. And if you're smaller and you're concerned the Topo mat is too big, or you simply don't have the floor space, there's a Topo Mini for that. To learn more, visit optimizeyourself.me/topo. That's TOPO. This episode of the Optimize Yourself podcast was made possible by the Human Charger, a revolutionary new light therapy device made specifically for people who spend long days in the dark and don't get enough sunlight, i.e. you and me. It's not a light box. It's smaller than an iPod Nano, and it fits right in your pocket. Now, no different than listening to music, all you have to do is simply put in the earbuds for 12 minutes a day to receive your daily recommended dosage of UV-free white light. This light stimulates the photosensitive receptors in your brain, which then affects your neurochemistry via neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, and noradrenaline. Doing so can drastically increase your energy, improve your mood, and increase mental alertness and focus. This device has literally changed my life, and I use it every morning without fail. To learn more, visit optimizeyourself.me/humancharger and use the code OPTIMIZE to get 20% off your order.